Welcome. And we're talking again about leadership and wellness with the great Charles Pascal, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the place that baseball has. Can I shamelessly show your book again? This whole notion of hard-earned lessons from education, we've talked about that. Government, we've talked about that. Let's talk a little bit about baseball, because I know you're a big baseball fan, and I am too. But I'm curious about your take on the importance of maintaining sort of interests outside our work and our passions, and how does that help us form a leadership from a wellness perspective?
Let me start with baseball and why that's part of the subtitle of the book.
Yeah.
It's when I was 8, 12 years old, that period, where leadership and the fact that I seemed to be able to do things that inspired the kind of complementarity of others on a team to do better. So a catcher basically is the only person who faces everybody else.
Yeah.
The catcher is normally the leader of a team. Most major league managers today are former catchers. And so at a very early age, baseball gave me an opportunity to learn some very valuable lessons that have been with me for over these many, many decades, including my longstanding commitment to anti-racism.
Mhm.
My grandfather and I were coming back from playing on an all-star game from the north side of Chicago to the south side, and I was 12 years old, and I said to my grandfather, God, those guys were really good that we just played on the south side, but their uniforms, their equipment, the infield was filled with stones. I mean, my God, that's awful. And my grandfather said, did you notice the color of their skin? And even though I had some white players on the team I played for, this is an all black team. So I saw the disadvantage that color played in terms of baseball. With respect to the other part of your question, which is really important, how does having something other than what your main drive is or what you get paid for, something in your life, that is so incredibly important to have something that just deals with a different part of your brain, a different way of thinking. One of the best books I've ever read on that topic is by Sir Winston Churchill, before we knew him as Sir Winston Churchill, when he wrote a book, it's a very short book, on being a portrait, not a portrait painter, but a painter. He was a brilliant painter. And really, for me, that book is a metaphor for if you can do something that's totally different from what you do, what it does, it's relaxing. It takes away the stress. It's something if you're in a job and the learning curve is flattened out, first of all, you should leave before it gets too flat because it's no more fun. But to supplement it with something where there's a learning curve that's just back up there where you're trying to figure it out. And nothing matters other than your self-satisfaction, that you're learning something. And that's a tremendous contribution to wellness, self-satisfaction, self-esteem.
The word retire just bugs me no end because, the stem on the word is tired. And, I prefer redirect, let's redirect our energy into something. And you and I mean, you've got baseball, you've got writing, you've got speaking, you've got all kinds of things that you do. You've got a place that now occupies a lot of your time down in the east, in the county. I've been playing drums with the same band since grade 13. We still play, at least we haven't during the pandemic, but we play. I play drums as a method of both therapy and enjoyment of music. I've always enjoyed music. So these are the kinds of things that leaders
Great.
use as therapy and as centering and all those good things. So let's talk about, wellness conversations can be kind of a bit preachy and judgmental sometimes, a little bit too sweetness and light. How can we reframe the conversations about wellness so they're helpful and we stay away from the blaming and shaming?
Part of getting people to a place of better happiness, contentment, and wellness is about who is providing the leadership to you. Because when I talk to this person I've mentioned in the past recently, this very well-known Canadian who works almost 24/7 in the most stressful situation. And I said to him, as a aging white guy, you need to breathe and meditate. There's something a little, or I talk about my journaling. There's something that's a little bit different in terms of an aging white guy talking about something that other people might see as touchy-feely or what do you mean meditating? And so it's who the communicator is and how they communicate the benefits. And if you find out, language is important. And again, there's a chapter in my book about the importance of language. And if we use language that we find isn't resonating with certain people, we have to figure out how to meet them where they're at in terms of what's the gap between where you are, in terms of how you feel about yourself, the different aspects of yourself. And you start with the positive. We have to catch people doing things right.
Yeah.
What are the things you already do for yourself that you think is contributing on the positive side of the ledger?
This pandemic year has been filled with some thorns and it may have been filled with some roses. And I want to focus on the thorns. Is there something related to wellness that's been a benefit for this year for us? What's the rose, the wellness rose this year?
Well, that's a great question. And the pandemic has pulled back the curtain regarding how things were not working. And the fact is, when it comes to public policy making and voters deciding, what kind of choices they want to make, or people and organizations and the kind of choices they want to make,
Yep.
we have to ask ourselves, what about that old normal? And I think the pandemic has pulled back this curtain and has called attention to the fact that when it comes to education, mental health and well-being and wellness, there's a lot that needs to be done that wasn't being done before, and we now know about that. That's a bouquet. That's 12 roses in one.
Yep.
To understand what we need to do going forward, and it's all about increasing wellness. And when it comes to anti-racism, access and equity, where we haven't been doing anywhere near as much as we need to do, the absence of understanding all that is just a depth of despair, the antithesis of wellness. So if we can turn preschool or childcare from 18 months through post-secondary, if that human development continuum can become an engine for basically anti-racism, indigeneity, LGBTQ issues, mental health and well-being, that's all about the roses of wellness. That will make a huge difference.
But the good news is that we're focusing in our organization on diversity, equity, inclusion. All of that is good stuff, but I'm moving my, many, many years as an educator thinking beyond equity, certainly way beyond equality, beyond equity, and now into liberation. I just get the fact that while you might be able to compensate in an equitable way, why are we compensating? We should be liberating and just letting everyone be part of the scene. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then and this one is probably worthy of a book at some point from you for sure. So what can leaders do to be the wellness champion? How can they become the CWO of the organization, the Chief Wellness Officer, CWO?
They have to model it. They have to give space for other people to take seriously the importance of wellness, to embed it into their organization. So to be a chief wellness officer. It's about making sure that it's important, there's resources, and that you get great leaders from within to start animating activities. If we're not well, if we're not feeling rested, if we're not feeling comfortable in our own skin, how can we do the work that's expected of us, whether we're a staffer, graduate student, or a professor?
Those are fantastic examples, and they're great words, especially for those folks that are, hanging out in their own school or their own classroom, and sort of feeling like they're the only person in the world that's feeling like they are. They're not. This is the point behind 21 Conversations. I think we've probably had all 21 conversations today. And I thank you, Dr. Charles Pascal. Charles, for being such a great sport in doing this. We'll make you even more famous than you are, I promise you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, brother Jim. Thank you.